But if we can go out and raise money for goats that do yoga, if we can go and raise money to spray paint the side of a building with a beautiful mural, but yet I see kids that are in desperate need and we can't do anything to help and support them, that's why we have Bridge to Tomorrow. Hi, friends and family, and welcome back to Pam and the Purple Couch Podcast. Today, we're going to deep dive into our nonprofit, Bridge to Tomorrow Foundation. Why did we develop a nonprofit for our kids? What was the need? Well, no one was filling in the gap, and somebody needed to. So today, we're going to talk about all the amazing things that Bridge to Tomorrow does for our students. So this was a good one here. You know why? Because I know this one front, back, forward, sideways. There was no prep we needed. Why did we do Bridge to Tomorrow? Well, let's see here. I think by the time I got to year 5, all my dividends I have scholarshiped out. That's again, and I don't talk about this because it's nobody's business. It's what I choose to do with the financial gains that I've been blessed by being able to do something that I'm passionate about.
Right.
You know, I think that was one of the biggest things. About 2 years ago, I was being interviewed and I'm like, oh goodness, what do you want me to talk about? This is before I was really taking the media and talking out in front of people. And someone asked me about, oh, well, isn't there state-fund school scholarships in Florida that just pay for everything? And I'm like, okay. So if your non-neurodevelopment private schools are charging $15,000 to $20,000 a year in a 15-to-1 ratio setting with neurotypical students, and daycares are charging anywhere from $9,000 to $12,000 a year for daycare. Do you think $9,600, which is the average Step Up for Students scholarship, is going to cover our students? It doesn't. But I also don't want to turn away families because they're in tough financial times.
Right.
So what we started doing was our dividends went into our scholarship program so that we were continuing to play it forward. You know, I'm not a very religious person. I'm a huge spiritual person, and I believe that that energy just keeps playing it. And I think that's why we survived COVID. We've been here, and we're still strong, and we're expanding after 11 years. But our families, and as we grow, it's been hard for just Pam to fill in the gaps.
Right.
And so what happened is we had a family come over, and they were like, hey, we really want to contribute to helping. And I was like, all right, then it's the call to the attorney. We need to set up a nonprofit because there's other businesses, other like-minded individuals that see the need, see the gaps that our kids are having and want to be able to assist. But I did it as a nonprofit so that there would still be some type of tax remuneration. What's the word I'm looking for? Tax benefit for them.
Right.
So that's why we did it.
Right.
But this isn't just something that's been here in Florida. We've been all over, not just here nationwide in the United States, but globally.
Right.
People in Asia don't realize how different the financial markets are. And when the U.S. is hitting, they're hitting everywhere. So we're looking even now, if there are other families that are like ours, that are like, okay, we need to help these kids fill in the gap because they see that our children now, 1 in 31, are going to be our leaders in the next 15 to 20 years. So what are we doing to help them be the best they can be?
Right.
Because I know when I'm 120, I'm going to want to be in a society where the kids that I am now putting through school are being our leaders, our congressmen, our senators, and could be our president. We don't know.
Right.
You don't know where that kid's potential is. That nonverbal kid that's 4 years old banging drums and playing could end up being your next leader if we give them the opportunities.
And to me, that's what makes Bridge to Tomorrow so special. I mean, you know, for me, like on a personal side and how it coincides with Bridge to Tomorrow, I would never have gone to college if it wasn't for scholarships. I would have never gone to college if it wasn't for grants that were available. You know, I wasn't, we weren't poverty, but we weren't upper class. We barely were middle class. Right. And, you know, at the time of trying to think about college, there wasn't a whole lot of money for my family to invest in, you know, going to college. So, you know, I worked my butt off to do that. But it took scholarship money that was available to me, that was made available to me by virtue of whether it was my socioeconomic status or my heritage being Hispanic male or whatever. But I had to apply for all that. I had to seek it out with my family. So going back, if I thought about my children, and especially like our neurodiverse families, they have special needs. They have unique needs. I think that's why the Step Up for Kids Scholarship calls it the Unique Abilities Scholarship, right? And it's good. It's all good. It's there. It's out there, and it helps a lot of people. It's clearly not enough because not everybody can get it, or they would. Well, so I thought for me, like that was like my sense of like Bridge to Tomorrow. Was like that helped me all those years ago. Those grants, those scholarships, and we're providing that for these families.
Well, one of the biggest parts is, though I can appreciate that what most families that don't have a neurodivergent child don't realize is there are no scholarships except for this Unique Abilities or state-funded education scholarships for private school, elementary, or early intervention. Fannie, Freddie, all these student loans that you hear about, that is not available to families that are in the thick of it now. Mm-hmm. If they can't get their kid into the proper elementary school that fits them, where they feel like their family, then there won't even be a need for college fund because we've got to get them first to be able to speak, to be able to facilitate learning. And so this is where we need the most funding is in these early informative years because there won't be college if we can't get them to love learning.
And even outside of college, like vocational skills, independent living skills, like all of these for our kids, right, that are neurodiverse families, it may be that they're not college bound. So now even the funding opportunities are even less.
Absolutely.
For the education of vocational skills and living skills and things like that.
No, or the other side, oh, well, the student can just take a loan out. And then what do? We have the cycle of debt. And then and we don't want our families to be in that. The next aspect that we need to look at is we need to make sure that our families have the ability to find the right home for their student.
Right.
And so one, we're talking about filling in the gaps there where state-funded scholarships for education do not help the family, or they go, oh, and look, I'm trying my best to hold my temper on this one because I almost feel it's like, again, I'm having a flashback to a comedy show, I've got ice cream and you don't. It's like, well, tuition is $18,000, I'm going to give you $5,000. So it's like, oh, here you go, mom and dad. Here's just enough to get you interested, but then fall flat on your face because this is all we're doing. Yeah. Now, the reason I'm holding my tongue here is because what most people don't realize is that you can go online and you can see what the average state per child allowance is. What upsets me is because this is based on the neurotypical student in the school. Not the neurodivergent, not the one that has a 32-page IEP with accommodations that are needed, not like all of our students at any of our campuses. And 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was 2022, the last funding came out, the state of Florida, by example, gets $12,250 per neurotypical student. But yet your average scholarship was only $9,600 for a neurodivergent kid. All right, so the first thing I want to know is where's the $4,000 gap? And then I want to know where's the additional funding that you got because the kid had an IEP. But yet the parents aren't seeing that. So the other part that we can all get upset about is about 65% of all the school's budget sits in the school board building with the superintendent, with the administrators, and not to the teachers and not to the special ed teachers. And the reason I'm pinpointing this, which is why did we need to do Bridge to Tomorrow Foundation? Well, because we weren't taking care of our kids.
Right.
All right, families, we'll be right back after this special message. At Bridge to Tomorrow Foundation, we are there filling the gaps that federal and state funding doesn't do for all of our neurodivergent families. There's educational, therapy, and support services that are available to our families, but most of them can't afford those services. We need your help today in helping us fund the future for those children. We need a gap, a bridge to get them to where they need to go. So today, help us help them be our future. And now, back to the Purple Couch Podcast. We were dangling a carrot in front of them and saying, oh, well, we have this wonderful scholarship, but that scholarship doesn't facilitate the proper learning that these kids need.
Well, and you've seen it more than I have over the years. Like, there are these amazing programs and out there, and even outside of Florida, like these schools and programs that exist, but no funding, no support. It's like, here's your tuition, and if you can't pay it, sorry, the door is closed. And it's striking that they would do that, right? That there's no support.
Absolutely.
There's no financial support.
No.
So it's been, we're fortunate with Step Up for Kids, and then the gap that you close with Bridge to Tomorrow. I mean, it's just...
Well, so let me tell you a little detail on this one, and it's just because no one's ever gotten into the nitty-gritty of why did we do Bridge to Tomorrow. Well, the first thing that we started looking for as our enrollment numbers got heavier and heavier, it was, okay, well, there has to be some type of loan program then so that our parents have, okay, so there is a $2,000 gap in between state and what our program is, and even with in-house scholarship. Mm-hmm. Okay, some parents are going paycheck to paycheck. So, well, can I have that $2,000, over 2 years? There's not even loan programs that are available. There's nothing for private school. I found one bank, commercial bank that we have, and this is nationwide. And when I actually called them, because they had advertisements, oh, we do tuition, loans for private school elementary. And I called them and I was like, look, I'm trying to find resources for my families. And they were like, oh, well, it's basically just a personal loan. And I'm like, okay, great. So that's still, but yet you can go finance a dog. Yep. You can finance a dog, you can finance a couch, mm-hmm. but you can't finance mm-hmm. your elementary students' neurodivergent education. Right. That's a problem, guys. They can go out with no credit, hardly no job, and go buy a $5,000 puppy, and they have no problem setting up a payment plan for a puppy. But yet if we go in and say, look, my student needs therapeutic services, and I have no insurance.
Right.
I need to set up, a loan program. Oh, nope, so sorry, that's too much of a risk, and we don't want the liability.
And as an ABA provider, something that's always kind of messed my head up a little bit is, so in the field of applied behavior analysis and the clinical side, we provide a medically necessary service, right? And so there's a lot to unravel with that. But what always occurred to me with the struggle with so what's medically necessary for a student, for a kid with autism, with developmental delays and learning delays? Well, one of the medical necessities they need is good education, right? So we can make all the arguments in the world, but to me, that's medically necessary. So then, but it's not provided, it's not insured. But yet, to take a different slant to that, so somebody that's ambulatory, it's medically necessary for them to get a wheelchair. Guess what's fully funded?
Oh,
the wheelchair.
The wheelchair.
So to me, the whole premise of medical necessity versus, what's in the best interest of the child, what they need, and how it all gets funded has always been kind of perplexing. And I can only imagine parents that are just I just need help for my
Correct.
kid, my kid needs education, and it's medically necessary they get a specialized education because of their neurodiverse
Wholeheartedly. See, and this is why we developed Bridge to Tomorrow.
That's it.
We did it because there are other companies. Oh my goodness, this is either going to fry me. I'm running through my head right now, families. What is my production team going to say? What is my editor going to say when I drop this one? But if we can go out and raise money for goats that do yoga, if we can go and raise money to spray paint the side of a building with a beautiful mural, But yet I see kids that are in desperate need and we can't do anything to help and support them. That's why we have Bridge to Tomorrow, because there had to be an alternative. There are so many good-hearted people, beautiful souls, not just myself. I can tell you just in Brevard County, our EDC committee are full of these amazing, beautiful people that are here trying to promote for our county the best situation, terms, conditions, and these souls are there to help. But how do they help?
Right.
What is the resource to make sure? I remember years ago, before COVID, there was another national foundation that was helping people. And then once the media got a hold of it, you found out they were just helping to pad their own pockets. So what we've done is, even with like our Legacy Launchpad, all of the funds that our profit go into our scholarship program, our Aspire program, our Mind Meld program, everything that we've built there, all of the profits from that go into our scholarship program to help. And Bridge to Tomorrow is not just for Puzzle Box families. We had one family that we helped with a university bill. They needed help with their enrollment document fees and things along those lines. And it was the student. He was doing it all by himself. So $750 is a lot of money for a 19-year-old that's just out of high school, that's not working, but is trying to do the best for them.
Right.
So yes, you give them that support so that they then don't quit the dream.
Right.
And that's the biggest part for me. The biggest part for me with Bridge to Tomorrow was to make sure that we don't have students that are literally taking their dreams and putting them to the side because of the financials.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One of the things that we're getting towards the end of our conversation about this, but one of the things I thought would be kind of cool is that we talk about kind of the vision of this, like long term. And there's one that obviously excites me from the ABA background of it is the research that we're talking about doing with NCS, right?
Yes.
So we can talk a little bit about that, but then, just in terms of like how, again, all the proceeds of everything we're talking about with Launchpad and everything goes into it, and the vision of this with all the different lives that we want to touch with this.
So I love it that you talked about the NeuroChange solutions. So that works hand in hand with ABA. I've just been introduced to this work in the last 2.5, 3 years, but we've been doing ABA, Manny, for decades now.
Yep.
And it is all about the neuroscience and biology about human change. And we see it in our kids. We didn't realize, but we're doing it already. We're doing it to impact the change thought process that then goes into the change behaviors, which then changes our environment, which then changes our next pattern. And, oh, you're getting me emotional on this, because if I can see that going on in our kindergartners and our first graders, and that's what we want to dive into, there's so much amazing research that can talk about how just through settling the body, you start to see the gut biome starting to change. You see the receptive and expressive language starting to change. The physical features of a being, once meditation is implemented, watching the stress fall off, not just our staff, but our kids.
Right.
And then the biggest benefit of that is watching our kids start assimilating this information to our parents. Hearing a mom come to me and say, hey, my husband and I, we were getting an argument about what we were getting for dinner. And little Jojo, wink, wink, comes over and says, I think we need to breathe. This is a neurodivergent kid that's now advocating his parents to breathe, Mom and Dad. Just take 5 deep breaths. This is what change is about.
Yep.
This isn't coming to them with a curriculum, we're beating you over head, you have to do ABC and you have to do, no. This is real life, real life coping skills that will be with them forever.
Yep.
So that's one part that we want to do. But the other part, when we're talking about this globally, is what we're about to do in our land. So guys, we never stop. I promised that once I did high school that I was going to take a time out and that Pam was done, and then I'd be doing this, publicly advocating so that parents knew and were never alone in the process. But then, just like Pat said, we use Loki as the guideline. So Loki is 19, going to be 20, and counting down the days. And in our home, I've already started thinking, what's life going to be like for him when he lives outside of the house? I am a helicopter mom. I am one of those moms. I am watching everything and over, and I don't treat him like he has a disability. I am harder on him than anyone will be, because I want him motivated, because I know his flaws. I know his tricks, and I named him after the trickster. So then I started thinking, though, about other families. And when we started originally, we were going to do a boarding school, because our kids, 80% of our neurodivergent kids drop out of college that first year. Well, who's going to fund that? When 45% of my families are on Medicaid, who's going to fund that opportunity for them? So we've got some things coming, some great things coming, where we're actually building a transitional living unit so that our kids and all demographic of financial backgrounds will have the opportunity to do these 3 months, 90 days of living away from home in an environment where they get to live independently and learn to live independently, so that we made it affordable for all. And we can only continue to fill those gaps in with the help and support for Bridge to Tomorrow. So this foundation really does. It fills in the gaps for elementary, for early learning, for therapeutic services, but it also comes in and helps our kids once they're out of school, when services stop.
Right.
When there is no more public education for them, when there is no therapeutic services, when all of a sudden, a kid that might have been covered under state funding or scholarship or insurance now becomes an adult. And now all of that goes away. Yep. What happens? Where's the support? That's what Bridge to Tomorrow is for. It is to help those parents, and especially the students that are now adults, that are learning to find their way. Because even today, I've heard it, even in the neurodivergent community. Well, he's 19 now. He needs to go get a job and be out of my house. I'm done. I've done my mom and dad work. I'm finished. Okay, well, did you even prepare him to live on his own?
Right.
That's where Bridge to Tomorrow comes in.
Yep.
So as we wrap up, I'm going to let you do the out, because my first tip and trick, my tip and trick is going to be, mom and dads, reach out to us. If we're not there to help you in your state, Bridge to Tomorrow is. We can help reach out, branch out. I'm thinking about the big tree. That's the whole reason it's one of our logos, is because we have to have a deep root system. And when we have a deep root system, then we can watch all of our plants grow. And those are our kids. We have to find their roots. We have to ground them. We have to be there to support them, so that we can also sit there and watch them grow. And they can't do it all by themselves. It takes a community.
I think that's a great way to end this segment. I don't have another tip after that. That's a good one. So I'm just going to end this with saying thank you for joining us on the Pam and the Purple Couch podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course share.
Absolutely.
Just like with the Bridge to Tomorrow, it's all about sharing and spreading the good information. So with that, thank you for joining us on Pam and the Purple Couch podcast. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.